Outer Orange.
We are back this time with the premium profile. Let's introduce our homie.
Hey there, my name is Kibo saying I got top 8 in premium Duluth Spring Fest for Georgia for 2022.
Wow, really good accomplishment, by the way.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
It is premium. It's tough. What did you bring?
I brought Vanquisher actually.
Wow, Vanquisher. You also bought Vanquisher for V.
Yeah, I did. Less cards to change out.
Yeah, this is true. So for this deck specifically, premium is pretty diverse in meta. What made you decide to bring Vanquisher into premium?
So Vanquisher specifically has a very powerful presence in premium because of mainly Sunburst Dragon. Sunburst being such a powerful control card in the format where your opponent has to play separately from the entire game. So bringing something like Narukami into a format that has Grand Blue, Order Mega Colony, stuff like Nightmare Dolls, and like Rogue, like tier 2, tier 1.5 picks like Jewel Knights, like Luard, like how to say, there's more decks that I think about sometimes like that, but I'm blanking. Like Shiryuki, stuff like that. So
Grand Blue?
Grand Blue, I just said.
Oh, you didn't? Don't listen to me.
I just said Grand Blue. So really all those decks are like in the top tier. Like I think the cross also, you always had to put Kagero in there. So really that diverse format, you always have to think about that. And I think Narukami is such a powerful pick into that because it's being such a control option in there.
Awesome. And then did you have like a specific win con or certain strides you prioritized?
So really the stride that's really prioritized is Sunburst Dragon because that's the only stride that really helps you push the game. You draw cards, you bind cards to your opponent's hand, you're playing Nubatama and you're playing OTT in the same stride that you're doing. You're buying cards from your opponent's drop zone. Many cards in this format really want to emphasize the drop zone, like Order Mega Calling. They need the book in the drop zone. If you bind the book, they need to put a new book in the drop zone. If you get rid of that book, then they're gone from the game. Stuff like Grand Blue, their drop zone is their life. If you get rid of their drop zone, if they don't play the grade 1 Stoicheia card that allows you to put cards back into the drop zone. Bell, correct. Then they are out of the game. And if you have cards like Kagero needs has to Legion. If you get rid of cards before they get Legion, then they're in a bad position. There's really a lot of cards in this format that really need the drop zone. And playing Sunburst is such a powerful stride. And then by unstriding back to Vanquisher, you can bind another card from your opponent's hand. And then a Voltage if you want to kill them.
True. Well, as a Grand Blue player, I do not enjoy facing Narukami, so...
Unless you get the grade 1.
Unless I get the grade 1.
But then if you bind that, then it's pretty hard.
No, don't say that. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the actual deck, so let's do that.
For our starter, we're running the starter that lets you get the Quick Shield and lets you draw a card. Really, I did think about playing the Thunderstrike starter that lets you rest it to bind a card from your drop zone. But ideally, you just really, I think the extra draw really does matter. Binding the extra card from your drop zone does matter in this format, but honestly, drawing the extra card and getting the Quick Shield helps you a lot advance your game plan for this deck. So for our grade 3s, I'm actually running 4 full Bronto and 3 Vanquisher. I couldn't get access to the 4th Vanquisher, unfortunately, but playing the 4th full Bronto, 4 full Bronto and then the 3 Vanquisher still helps out a lot. You see this enough where you can ride it, and then this you want is your hand so you can extend more attacks, especially after the Sunburst where you draw multiple cards. You really are emphasizing just attacking as much as possible. Your opponent, when they G-Guard, they really are going to emphasize that. I misplayed a lot with attacking the Vanguard a lot because I forget that Brilliant Blister allows you to rest if my Vanguard's rested. I was like, oh, okay. So, but I still won all my Order Mega Calling matchups because they can't really handle a lot of this deck's, what this deck really does. And of course, Vanquisher, buying the extra card from your opponent's hand after Stunburst is very powerful. Jagged Shot Dragoon at 4, self-explanatory, very powerful card. Extending more attacks to your opponent after you Stunburst then is very efficient. And if you're going first, just playing Vanquisher V Premium, that's all you're doing. So it's a very powerful deck. Drawing into your heal triggers is really your main win con for this deck. And if you do that, you really are just going to win the game off there. For the grade 2s, I have switched it up from my V lineup actually, and I play Voltage Shred instead. Voltage Shred is more powerful and premium because you're able to bind cards to your opponent's back row a lot more because of Stunburst. So you're not really needing stuff like a Barca to actually bring cards to the front row. And because this is on attack instead of end of battle, your opponent can't really interact with it that much with like Denial Griffin or like Head Around, or like if you have your Grand Blue G-Guard with Skeleton Cannoneer combo, you really can't interact with Voltage Shred that much because you already got out the rear guard and it's still attacking. So you have to interact with it somehow. So this is a lot better than that. And also drawing before binding is always better than binding than drawing. Rock Climb Dragoon, I think you always keep it at 4 because it retires to draw, then bind a card, extra attack. Binding in front row rear guard is always great. And then just advancing your multi-attack plan is always the best part. You have Shtra, Excelsior Flurry, 4 or bust. That's all I'm gonna say, 4 or bust. Chamble, it's a lot more important for Chamble to be in this deck, just because you really want to ride into your original Vanquisher, because after you unstride from Stunverse, you really need to utilize that effect to bind an extra card for your opponent. And if you don't, then it's really just hard. So riding this is very imperative. If you have something like Mighty Bolt, probably, but you usually want to prioritize this because this is a rear guard effect skill. Speaking of which, is the Mighty Bolt. The Mighty Bolt is going to stay at that margin right here. Extra search for the Heal Guardians, which help out with your G-Guard capabilities. And honestly, it was just a powerful card in premium format. I went undefeated during that entire tournament, unfortunately losing top 8 because of that. And Mighty Bolt helping out search that Heal Guardian forced my opponent to play a different way, because now they have to worry about my G-Guards, which are interacting G-Guards. And then I have Rising Phoenix at 3. Really, I played against one mirror match with his Vanquisher, and then their main thing was that they guarded too much with Rising Phoenix, and I was able to prioritize that and get rid of the Rising Phoenix, losing the amount of attacks they got. And I made sure my Rising Phoenix never hit drop zone until they couldn't really Sunburst properly, and they had to go to a different stride. So really, for the mirror match, that's Rising Phoenix is you have to play with this card a lot more carefully than any other match. Ideally. Heal Guardians, really, these are extremely important in premium because you need to access your G-Guards if you're playing against a combo deck that you really can't interact with that much. Such as Genesis, Loop, any form of that. If you G-Guard enough, they lose their entire game because they need to loop you for game. And then if you just get rid of their board enough and lose their hand and they got rid of their combo, like Regalia or stuff like Vanguard Loop or like the Overtrigger Infinite, then yeah, then you could just do that to just secure a game, really. The draw trigger, I just play the Dragon Empire draw. I didn't have it. It's expensive. It's expensive for a trigger. The Overtrigger, standing at Vanguard is always great in premium. If you stand a stride, extra 3 drive checks. If you stand anything, I did think about playing the Obaria, the Crayon Elemental, because to give 2 units 100 million. Did think about playing Cho-Oh for that reason. But if you're gonna play Obaria, you might as well play Cho-Oh because 100 million attacking twice is always better. PG draws, of course, and then the strike crits, and then your regular crits. PG draw is very important. You usually want to run them. So now let's go to the G zone. Stunverse. I didn't really practice much with Stunverse until because a lot of people don't really play premium that much until I went into the format, until practice more in the format, and then I realized how broken Stunverse was. It's the reason it's like $45 price tag on TCG Player right now and the other sites, because you're controlling the game state so much with this card. Just able to get rid of your opponent's hand, binding their field and drop zone, drawing cards, binding more cards, Vanquisher effect, binding more cards. And then now you're just backing up Vanquisher, attacking with your multi-attack. So always a great card. I don't recommend playing 4 because you're gonna deck out if you run 4. Even 3 is a little too much because if I went to the 3rd one, I had 5 cards left in deck. So you draw a little too much with this deck sometimes if you go to too many Sunverses, which is why 3 is a good margin to really play with this deck. I run 3 full V-Buster. They're just flip fodder for Sunverse mainly. If your opponent really doesn't have a card, only have 1 rear guard or 1 card in drop zone because they just took your attacks, just go into it. I mean, it gives 3k to the front row. So 3k to the front row. That's all you need to do. But usually just flip it with this. Don't go to anything else if you can't do that. A closer, the most powerful GBA in the game, I say. Just binding your opponent's entire drop zone on stride, retiring all the rear guards, and doing that against Grand Blue, that's the end of the game for them. They can't go back. They can't come back from that.
This is very true.
Against Kagura, if you get rid of their drop zone, gone. If you get rid of Jewel Knights, if you get rid of their drop zone, then they can't recycle anything else anymore. If you get rid of, there's so many decks, like even Automatic Colony, if you bind so many cards in your drop zone, they can't really do anything else anymore. That's the end of the game for them.
And
In the book, the grade 3 mutant that restands, calls back out from drop zone after the attack. So really, closer is probably, I say, is the most powerful GBA in the game right now because it answers so much of the meta. And then like really giving 2k for every card in the binds for both players' bind zone. You always have to remember that it includes you. You do bind cards from your hand sometimes. That just stays in the bind zone. So always remember to keep that in account. So like I think one time I got plus 80 to my entire board. So you always Narukami's main goal after they sunburst is making columns too big for your opponent to guard. We have VMAX. VMAX is the reason why we use these as flip fodder. So, and we play these voltages still. It's because VMAX is a card that wins you the game. If your opponent can't answer the fact that you are going to deal them a damage no matter what. If you deal them that 1 damage, that's the end of the game because this is unrestricted damage. So if your opponent's at 5 and your opponent has no rear guards at the end of the battle, you're kind of about to deal them damage.
Wow.
So you always want to keep this in your G zone. It's a better dust pre-errata. Or it's a worse dust pre-errata. It's a better dust after errata. But you always want to keep this as if your opponent has too big of a hand, but you're playing as a clan that can't play out rear guards, then you go into VMAX and you attack them. They PG you, that's fine. Deal them damage, end the game right there. If they heal, then you're screwed. Voltage is usually your ending stride if you think you need to end the game. So with that, then voltage is really just because it gains so much power to the front row. I think my Vanguard attacked for 100, and then my rear guards are all 90s. So voltage is always the card you always want to keep in an account in your G zone. Voltage is your win con. If you can't win just with Vanguard Vanquisher combos, voltage will be your savior at most of the time. So that's actually it for all my strides. For my G guards, I actually ran 6 G guards. Some people might say that you might want to run 5 G guards, but I think for Narukami, I even want to cut out some cards to run a 7 G guard because Narukami's G guards are such a powerful answer to the meta, such with Impede and with Bulwark, that you really need to just run more G guards because Impede retires 2 rear guards, Bulwark retires the front row for every 4 cards in your opponent's bind zone. This just takes a shield, but this allows you to answer an entire board with this G guarding. I usually prioritize getting my heal guardians to my hand because if I think I'm gonna die or my opponent's gonna plus a lot, I'm just gonna triple G guard on them and I'm gonna try to retire their board. Usually with this deck, what I do is I keep my front row with only interceptors. So when my opponent has a very scary board, I'm intercepting with all my rear guards and then I'm gonna G guard because I have no more rear guards left for Impede effect. My Impede's full effect is active and I'm getting rid of their board. Same with Bulwark, but Bulwark is with a front row and for every 4 cards. But with the new wording is it's when it's retired from Guardian Circle. What that wording means is that it's right before end of battle, but right after battle. So your opponent's end of battle effects cannot trigger when this card activates. So your opponent has end of battle with a Night Storm. They have end of battle with other cards. I think there's not much in the meta that has end of battle effects at this point now. But it is something you have to keep in an account with a Bulwark, is you are answering more cards. And then the last G guard is this. I don't know. When the new premium collection comes out, these are going to change into the other G guard. To be honest, probably putting the 7 G guardians in here to secure the deck.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have any questions?
Surprisingly, no. I actually was very intrigued. I learned a lot just from you explaining, literally the whole deck. As weird as it sounds, I learned like 5 new things off of just listening to you explaining some of the matchups and explaining how the deck works. Even this skill right here that you were just talking about, that's actually really interesting how it goes in between that weird gray zone of end of battle. Aside of the usual you're not running that. So something I know some people they run that. Again, you're probably gonna help me with the name. It's the grade 1 that says every time you boost you draw a card and then you can buy something from
so
the
that's
top.
Eradicator Demolition Dragon.
Yeah.
I did initially think about running it. I did even think about more aspects about running it. I had people telling me you should run it, but there was not really many opportunities I could fit in this deck. If I was thinking about it, I might put down Rising Phoenix to 0 to put that in, but I think you're buying enough cards from your opponent drops. And sure, you get to choose the card you bind with the Demolition Dragon, and you draw a card, which is great, but I think really it's a preference choice. I want to test it out, of course, but testing it out requires me to find more people to play with, of course. Kingslayer cards might have an event on June 24th. I might practice there. But really, it's a player's preference, really. Raising Phoenix allows for more attacks, and then Demolition allows for more control, and it drops them.
Interesting. Yeah, I was just wondering because I know a lot of Narukami players who really worship that card nowadays. They really like that card.
I would test it out. I personally haven't tested much of a Demolition Dragon specifically.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. I just thought I'd ask because I know facing a bunch of Narukami matchups, I've seen that card pop up, and then they just buy
Especially in
my dragon
Springfest,
early.
right?
And I'm like, okay, cool. There goes my dragon. And you know, some people buy books because it's their choice, and if people kind of don't guard properly, they'll usually you can punish them with that.
Grand
So
Blue really
serious.
doesn't want their cards to be bound
No,
that
never.
way. Yeah.
But all right, I think that concludes it there. We're gonna do the pounding. Let's go. Boom! Thank you for coming on.
I'm gonna say goodbye. Big shout outs to Cameron Stewart and Brian Jefferson once again for allowing me to borrow cards this weekend. Big shout outs to Super Games, locals for helping me support. Big shout outs to Masha for allowing me to borrow this deck to do this profile. I unfortunately don't own them. I sold them that weekend.
Oh.
But honestly, big shout outs. So, yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming on. We're gonna go ahead and head out. So peace out, guys. Das vidaniya. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.